guys. Welcome to my first episode of what I guess I'm just gonna call Pillow Talk. It takes place on my velvet pink bed that I bought the bedspread for. Don't be deceived. I thought it was super cool. It was on sale at Aldi for $40 and I have gotten so much use out of it. So this segment will be called Pillow Talk. And today's subject, what we're gonna be talking about is the super straight movement. Okay. This is fun. I like the idea of this one. I like the idea. I'm not crazy about the application. So let's just get that knocked out immediately. What I want to say about it first and foremost is that not crazy about the branding, the SS thing. People are really leaning into the SS and they don't know, like, that's a thing already. Like, SS bolts were, I'm just gonna show a picture here. I feel like if I talk about it even, like, are you even allowed to say certain stuff on YouTube? Can I talk about things even when talking about them historically? I don't know, but I mean, anyway, the SS bolts as a sign, they're taken by the people that you probably don't want to be associated with. Like, there is a phrase that I learned on TV from someone who was referencing Jay-Z. And Jay-Z had said something along the lines of, when you argue with fools, people from a distance can't tell who's who. And I don't know if that's the right quote, but it's the version I remembered after all these years, and it makes a lot of sense. So the thing is, like, when you think you're being ironic online and whatever, people aren't gonna get your detached sense of irony, so you have to be really careful. Like, being associated with something that is the SS bolts, maybe you think you're joking, but other people don't take it that way. So be very weary of what you're doing when it comes to things like that. So that's why I'm saying I'm not crazy about the application, but the rhetoric, here we go. Now that I like the idea that it's like, that was the biggest problem for me, was the idea that if you weren't down to clown with anybody and everybody, you were transphobic. And I was like, I know science and I understand that the suffix phobic means afraid of, or at least connotatively, which is like, connotation is like the cultural understanding, and then there's denotatively, which is the dictionary, dictionary. So it's like, denotatively, phobic means to like go away from and to repel from. Like when we use it in science and whatnot, it's used probably more in chemistry, I should be specific, but to be phobic is to repulse away from something, and to be philic is to go towards something. So that's how that works. So the idea that you're transphobic just because you're not into something that's incorrect, and that's like against all the logic that we've been applying this whole time. Like, a straight person's not homophobic for not wanting to do gay stuff. He's allowed to have his preference, and like, okay, there's like billions of other dudes on the planet, like maybe one of them will be into the thing that you're into, you know? But like, it's not homophobic if it really doesn't appeal to him. Now, if he's doing it literally out of fear of being seen as gay, then yeah, maybe homophobic. And that's why like phobic was used there, because it really was a fear of being perceived as gay or seen as gay, and that being gay is the worst thing. And that is not the same. It's not a direct correlation to where people are applying that and then you just insert the word trans in there. It's like, that's not the same thing at all. In fact, like, most people I know have kind of a live and let live policy, but the whole thing is like, oh, once you start not just letting live, like you start invading the spaces of others, that's a problem. That's where people don't like it. Like when you're going into the women's changing areas, like that's when it's an issue. More people are bothered by your small act of don't worry about me. I'm like, I'm worried about you. That's worrisome. That's like worrisome logic to follow. And I get that the idea of a slippery slope can be used as a logical fallacy. I'm aware of that. I took debate in high school. But there's a reason why the ideology exists in that case, and it's because a slippery slope is a real thing. Now, to equate something to it that is, illogical, that's the problem. But to actually see, things are going downhill, and if we allow this, it's only going to get worse from there. That's just, I feel like I probably use really colorful language. I was going to say that's just seeing the forest for the trees, but I don't know that everyone can follow everything, and I don't know. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to talk the way I talk. If it sounds like I'm being pretentious, it's just because I like to speak the way I like to speak. There was a book that I had to read in like junior high and elementary. Junior high. It was called The Dictionary of Cultural Literacy. And that is one of my favorite things, because not only does it make you sound smart when you talk about it, but it really was like, for an ADD type brain, it was fantastic. Because it was like a dictionary segmented into things that were just about topics. And I'm like, great, let's keep it vague, just like that. That's how I like it. So it was like art that you should probably know about. It's kind of like when people talk about the famous ones, it's like, oh, okay, so who makes the list of the famous ones? What's that? Before BuzzFeed would tell you that. So I love that sort of thing. I had another book called Miscellany by Ben Schott, Schott. That's like my favorite book I ever stole. It also was so classy because it was a book that had like a ribbon bookmark attached to the book, so you couldn't lose it. And you always knew where you were last time. And you're like, ooh, why was I learning how to rap a sarong? That's interesting. It was a sari. I don't know why I said sarong. I think sarongs are for the poolside. I don't need those. I don't wear those. I wear my shorts, and then when it's appropriate time, I drop my shorts and I wear the swimsuit that I want to wear. Depends on the crowd, depends on the room, depends on how appropriate I see the particular situation. That's the thing, is I'm like, I feel like you're allowed to be who you want and do all this and that, but also like be appropriate. Like just know the stakes of what you're doing. Like, is what you're doing worth making everyone in the room uncomfortable? Is it worth alienating everyone? And then what? Playing victim? What's the MO there? Go to a space that's not about you. Make it about you. Cause chaos and disrupt everything. Like, what's the goal there unless it's like subterfuge? I don't understand why you would want to do that unless you get something out of it. And because I don't believe it's like politically motivated, that these guys like hate women and they just want to go in their changing rooms and make them so uncomfortable. I think they get something else out of it, and it's like something that's not an appropriate place to seek that validation, or to take that adult concern that is very private and to take that into public spaces that are just, people let their guard down when they have to be naked or when they have to be vulnerable like that. Like, that's a really inappropriate time to be messing with people. And I know that. I was like an openly gay athlete in high school and stuff, and like I was under the perception that most people assumed I would be predatory. So I went out of my way to like, eyes to the wall. Well, not eyes to the wall, but it was like, hey, y'all, change here. I'm gonna go around the corner, and it's really not for like the traditional like me so hate my body, oh no, Catholic reasons. Because the thing is, it was like, whatever, it was wrestling. I actually felt pretty good about myself. But it was like, I'm just gonna make sure you guys never have a reason to say, oh, you were looking at me or perving on me, and I'm like, but I wasn't, and you can't place me at the scene of that crime. So what happened from there? And that was just one thing that I realized that's on my part. That's definitely like, I do believe like it wasn't a totally unfounded thing, but I believe that was probably like my own insecurity. But I think I was being appropriate. Like, call it an insecurity, but I think it was like, for the sake of my team, the goal that I wanted was acceptance, so that as a team we do better, we practice better, we get better. And then that validates me harder than anything else. And that's actually what ended up happening. Was by my senior year, I had been out for 2 full years, I guess. I came out my sophomore year in 2007. And so from there, I went inner city in my town, and that was 5 high schools. And like, I'm from a large town, so that was a big deal to me. I had my hot pink shoelaces on my wrestling shoes. I had blood inside of all my, in my lips because I had braces, and I had to wear a mouth guard, which makes it so much harder to breathe while you're trying to wrestle. I'm telling you. And then you're always on blood time. I mean, they put a tampon in your lip sometimes. It was like a thing they could do. They're obviously not jumbo or whatever, but it was like these tiny things, and it would just to like absorb the blood till you're good enough to like get on the mat. You get slapped aggressively on the ass by your coach. That was, everybody did it. In front of your parents, in front of all your teammates, your friends, and everybody. It's just like a get 'em thing. I feel like this was a lot more common back then, and now people are gonna be like, ooh, that's a kink. And I'm like, I guess, but it was more like, if you now are doing it, like, under the guise of that, but under the guise of that, it's like, people, believe it or not, people used to like touch each other on the shoulder. People used to have like common intimacy that was really nice. It's good to be a part of like a community. So the idea that you just want to go into spaces and make people uncomfortable and ruffle all the feathers and be like, why isn't everyone like lusting after me? And why isn't everyone like constantly trying to like hook up with me for clout? And it's like, because first of all, it's not really the clout that people are after. And second of all, it's like disruptive based. Off what? It's like saying I'll go be on reality TV show, and instead of like giving the audience some time to make an opinion, just make me the villain immediately. I'd rather just like, I'll take it because it means more camera time. I don't care that my life becomes harder. I don't care that people are going to threaten me and it's gonna like make my mental health suffer. Like, I don't care about stuff like that. I just, anything for the clout. And I'm like, my stakes aren't quite there. Maybe I sound like I didn't have the common experience with a lot of people who claim this struggle, but in reality, I'm like, I probably did. I just had a slightly different path. And like, everybody has their own path with this. Like, discovering your sexuality, and I think that's the case for, I'm not actually gonna say a lot of these people, because a lot of these people actually do seem to be heterosexual, but just to the point where it's like covetous. Like, they want so deeply to own the idea of what it is to be the other sex, either to be a woman who wants to be a man for the sake of what? Being included in homosexuality? Heterosexual? Like, what part of the experience do you think you want? Because there are a lot of like females claiming to be men who really want to just like invade gay spaces, which makes me think they watch a lot of adult things that are not aimed at them, and they're like, I want to be a part of that. I see the guys in those scenarios still being treated better than the women in heterosexual scenarios in these same adult things that I'm talking about. That's a camera. That's an old-time camera. Do people know that? You'd have to get under a hood and you'd crank it, and then I think there was a flash bulb and whatever. So I'm pantomiming a lot because I think I can't say certain words here. But yeah, that's the thing, is I just feel like that's a very common thing, and I think that the opposite goes the same, but it's for different psychological identifying reasons, which is why you don't necessarily see, you know, both of those communities, the females pretending to be males and the males pretending to be females. They're not like besties and buddy-buddy. Like, they're at best like that frictional relationship between gays and lesbians who are only friends out of obligation. I was friends with gays and lesbians because I feel like that's just what happened. Like, back in the day, you just gravitated towards each other. Like, socially, you just kind of felt other people, even in class projects, would kind of like push you together, and they're like, make this happen. Like, like, we don't want any gay stuff, but like, we feel like y'all talk the same, and you guys really get like bubbly and chatty and giggly together or whatever, and it's like, yeah, let's just like have you guys do that. And it was just, it worked for everyone socially, and when you're young, it's like, that's when people, they bring up the idea of being feminized or socialized female or socialized male. I do actually understand what they're trying to say. I was socialized, I would say, probably more female because I was raised mostly by my mom. My dad had to work constantly to pay the bills around here. My brother had cancer as a child and whatnot. And the fact of the matter is, I was hanging around women. I liked when they'd sit down and just chit chat, and I could eavesdrop a little bit, and like, it was just, I found that sort of stuff interesting, and I definitely caught myself, especially like the way I gesticulate, the way that I'm very expressive, and that I value communication so highly, which is why I think I care so much about vocabulary and about like having a very enriching way of communicating. So I understand the idea of being female socialized. I disagree with it though. Because I mean, if you look back in the day, the sages and the scholars, like they were all about like, let's talk about it. Why do you feel that way? And like, oh my gosh, are you sure about that? Like, explain why you feel that way. Like, it was the side of the brain that you would probably associate with being a socialized female. And that's the thing. I think that it's a human thing. I think that we have a left brain and a right brain. We have beautiful duality in our body, like all of our, I mean, for the purpose of what I'm saying, our more spiritual parts kind of come into, is like your tongue even is split in two, and it meets in the middle as it should. Like the human reproductive parts are all in pairs. Your arms are in pairs, your legs are in pairs, your knees, your elbows, the important joints come in. I mean, you're a dual being. That's what it is to be human. So the idea that you are a female spirit or a male spirit is like, no, you're a spirit. You're living in a human body. The body you were given was male. The body you were given was female. You need to accept that. There's a duality. Like, I understand that as a homosexual person that like I still seek to complement my partners. Like, I will say in the terms of yin and yang, like if I feel a lot of yin coming on, like, oh, okay, I'll bring my yang, like, because I am a dual person. I look for that in other people too, where I'm like, when I am weak, I need you to be strong, when, you know, and then vice versa. I felt myself being not able to like do that right. I'm like, I'm about to slip that up. But that's the thing. I seek a particular level of understanding in other people, and I understand that not everyone comes from the same perspective as me, and that everyone has their own journey, and that probably our most common thing is just based on our needs, and our needs are to be loved, to feel affection, to feel included. And so I get that, and I get why people are so quick to be what is being called handmaidens, women who are kind of just giving away their freedoms, like, no, I want to support this, and not realizing they're putting their daughters at danger. All the women that they loved before these strangers that they now are advocating for. I find that to be an interesting point, but as I am not a woman, I can observe and I can speculate, but I can't speak to that necessarily, though as a person, I got eyes and ears and a brain, and I realize that when it comes to things like talking and brains, like, everyone is capable of saying anything or doing anything. Physically, it's a whole different ball game, of course, but I just mean your mouth and your tongue are able to be fixed to make a myriad of sounds. It's up to you how you want to fix them, how you want to sling your spells, if you will. But I have not talked about my root point, which was the super straight movement. The super straight idea is just that, okay, the logic you're applying to me, I'm just gonna apply right back to you, and you're gonna have to listen to how absurd it is, and you can't reject it because of the rules of the game that you just created. So, how are we gonna get around this one? And so that's where I almost wonder, I'm thinking out loud at this point now, I almost have to wonder if this is kind of, well, at first I thought that the whole gender ideology movement was foreign propaganda, and I realized that shoots my credibility and people don't like to hear that. They're like, ooh, that's too far-fetched. And I'm like, okay, believe that. I believe what I believe. You can believe what you believe. We are all super free to do that. Going forward, though, I'm just saying, I never thought it was truly everyday transsexual people in droves coming out with all this like vitriol online. I didn't feel like that. Like it seemed like a very small population was somehow like super computer savvy and had like all of this reign on the internet. And I'm like, is that how this works? Like, if you live in the computer, you forget the fact that like you're a human person who has certain biological needs, and if you're gaming or like you're working online for 20 out of 24 hours a day, that's just what happens. Because I play video games and I understand reality. And when I see my characters doing roles and swinging swords all day, I go, I want to do that. I want to be that. if I could make somebody else do that, I should have the to do that, you know? The gumption, let's say that. I should have the gumption to do that myself. So that's why I particularly like to train with stuff like that. I like to live a fun anime lifestyle, and I'm like, okay, cool, like, be the person you want to be, for sure, but like, realize there's limitations. Like, I'm a guy of a certain height, I'm a guy of a certain body frame, you know what I mean? Like, there's just, everybody has reasonable limitations on them, on the things that they're suited for. So it's, you know, different strokes for different folks, but kind of lean into what you got. And I think that if you're walking around pretending to be the opposite sex and expecting other people to like get down with what you're saying, you lose me there. You lose me, you lose my confidence, you lose my credibility, because it's the same as if someone's like, hey, do you want to learn about a timeshare? And I'm like, I'm not the audience for this, buddy. Like, sorry, try someone else with it. But if it's at a point where you're actually like making droves of people uncomfortable, I'm a busybody. I get involved when I see stuff in public. I've saved a person's life that way, so I value the fact that I do that. But I mean, I like to, if I see a problem happening, I want to prevent it from happening. I'm that guy. Like, 9 out of 10 people walk by at that experiment where like that woman was being murdered in broad daylight. I can't remember the name of that experiment, but the whole thing was everyone assumes someone else will help, so they don't even call 911. And it's like, regardless if you called 911, she'd be dead. Like, is that like the real, what you think helps in this scenario? And you're just like, psychologically, you shirk that off to the next person. So that's why I'm a busybody. Like, studies like that, I don't know, that sort of information gets to me. I'm like, ooh, I'd be really embarrassed to be like, I saw someone die today. What did you do? Watched. So I just mean, this isn't me bragging. I'm saying it's actually kind of one of my shortcomings too, is like, I've picked fights that I did not mean to pick, or I did and I was too big for my britches, and just like, I don't know, like, know thyself. And I'm saying I'm a busybody. So if I see women asking a man to leave the women's restroom and he does not comply, I would feel the need to be involved, only in order to equal the playing field, just because like, you're a guy, I'm a guy. I'm not intending to get physical with you by any means. I'm just saying, if you intend to get physical with someone who's smaller than you, guess who's in line for that game? I come from brothers. I come from fighting boys in the neighborhood, and that's how it works. Like, it's the same way in prison, by the way. I'm just saying, like, guys don't like to see people who just take opportunities to beat on people smaller than them. And if that's what it is, you go invade someone else's space, push their buttons until they feel that they're like, I have asked you to leave and I'm scared, that sort of scenario. Like, I'm a busybody, yeah, I'd be involved. So, you know, I realize a lot of people don't want to put their reputation on stuff like that. I realize a lot of people think that it makes them sound hateful to have personal boundaries. You know, I came out of the closet and it was for the purpose of saying, like, I'm not going to be lying to the world. I'm not going to be having people trying to push girlfriends on me. Like, I'm not going to be doing that and being put in that scenario over and over and over again, just so people can like punk me and like, ha ha ha, like, gotcha. You're not into girls, or ooh, I know something about you that you don't know about you. And it's like, no, I don't want to play that game. I'll bite the bullet. I'll take the crap that comes with it. And mind you, I very much did. And so I'm not making myself out to be a victim. I'm just saying, like, I took the licks and I learned the lesson. So my lesson is that my boundaries need to be respected for me to feel mentally sound, because otherwise I'm in disarray and I'm in discord, and I don't thrive like that. I can't think as rationally as I'd like to. I won't say I'm irrational, because I do still think in terms of self-preservation and minimizing damage, but there is like a certain point where it's like, everyone has their muscle memory and everyone has their traumas and everyone has their life story growing up, you know? And like I said, I have fought boys, so I realize the stakes of like, when you pick a fight, like, are you willing to get the amount of punches back that you'll get? So I'm not a puncher. I wrestled, I grapple. I worked at a correctional facility for 6 months as part of an internship to finish my college degree. So the whole thing is, I'm like, I am aware of the fact that like, what you do unto others, they can do to you too. So I also saw that one time on TV, because it's a big thing with police where not in every state, but in a lot of places, in order to own a taser, you have to have been tased yourself, which I really like. Because it's like, yeah, if you think you could just be out here electrocuting people, and you're like, what? It's not like it's a bullet. It's like, you need to know. I got tased at a party in college one time for fun. Someone had a taser, and they were like, and I was like, is it scary? Because I thought I'd have to do it to be a police officer. I still thought I was going to do that. I was in school for that, which is why I had the internship. But it turned out, I did 6 months of that, and I was like, I've been drinking almost every day. I hate this so much. I feel so guilty, and I'm not even the person who's ever put a person in handcuffs. Like, I just feel terrible being a part of this system. I'm like, I'm 23 years old. I'm not built for this. I'm not ready. So, you know, done with that. But at the time, I was like, yeah, I want to know what it's like to be tased. So he got me like just on the thigh. He did like, because I had like 2 teeth and then the current arcs between them, and it just, and he like tapped me. He did not try to stun me. He tapped me, and I was like, ooh, that was weird. Like, that really felt like the muscle fibers that run down my leg. I felt them contract horizontally, even though they all run vertically. So it was very like, that was so bizarre. Like, I understand the effect of it without needing the full experience. And I was like, yeah, that was, I'm lit up. Also, one time I put a fork in the outlet as a kid. So, lesson learned. I knew I didn't want to get shocked ever again. And to this day, I'm very scared of that, but I've done electrical work, and I'm like, if you know what you're doing and there's no chance of it happening, it's not scary. It's only when you're like, I don't know, is this a live wire? Do I got to take my chances? That's terrifying. But if you realize, you're like, there is no way that power can go from A to B, then it's like, my brain is giving me the confidence to know this for sure. Peace of mind. I had to replace our cable stuff. And I was like, cable is not electrical though. It's not gonna shock me. So it was like, as soon as I got that through my head, like my comfort with it just immediately went from like a little jittery to like, man, this is just plugging stuff into stuff and ripping stuff and cutting stuff. But it was really like, you're doing metal on metal. You need to be careful. You gotta make sure everything is like, you're sure nothing's touching anything that's touching anything electricalized. So anyway, I digress from that. I'm just saying, I don't know what I'm saying, but I will say, back to my root point about the super straight, super gay, super lesbian, super bisexual movement. I think it's just a way for people to counter the rhetoric. It's a way for, I think it was a needed response. I personally loved it because I'm not super straight. I don't have to do SS because I don't want to be a part of that. Don't associate me with that. I already got fake blonde hair. Like, I feel like people make their little logical leaps already. So I'm just like, no, don't do me like that. I want to keep having blonde hair. I have it in all my life. It's like, it's on all my paperwork, so just leave it. I was a blonde kid. Let me have this, you guys. Also, like, let me have my sex. Like, don't call me she, don't call me her, just amongst like gay people or thinking it's like fun or whatever, and then be like, you can't misgender people. I'm like, no, let people have their sex. Don't take it from them. Don't call them other stuff. Don't call women men. Don't call men women. I get that, like, have a sense of humor about stuff for sure, but like, that's the whole point, is this isn't being funny. Like, this is so serious. People are like, no, I'm a woman. For real, for real. Don't mind my facial hair. Don't mind the fact that I know that everywhere I go, I will command the respect of a man, because people will give me the psychological benefit of assuming, oh, that's a male, he has a particular intellect and a particular way of being raised where people valued his opinion and like, I get that male socialization as much as I spoke on the female socialization. I'm aware of both implications. I'm aware of the ideas of intersectionality, but I'm a white guy, so I'm gonna speak to the fact that I'm like currently in the majority in a country where like that's the case. So me speaking on the intersectionality about it is kind of just like, okay, I have my points on it. You're probably not that super interested in it in 2021, but I mean, like, I totally understand that, like, there are definitely, like, you know, things that lead to the psychology of why you would identify as the opposite sex. And I do believe that there are factors that coincide with the nuclear family. And do I believe that the nuclear family is the right family? Not necessarily. I do not. I believe it's like the current form of mom, dad, 2.5 kids with a dog. Like, that's kind of the idea of the nuclear family. But meaning a family that has a nucleus. I feel like that sounds like it's gonna explode, but it's not that. And I just had that thought now where I was like, oh my gosh, nucleus, nuclear. So smart. But yeah, that just means that there is a center to it, and that means probably the father's income. But obviously we've seen in this day and age, like, so many people just do them, male and female. They're not supporting other people. There's not like an internal economy within their household, because either they're both breadwinners, or they have their own money and they pay for their own things. Then rent is everybody's gutting factor. So I will just say, my bed's so messy. I will just say that while I can't speak to everyone's experience, I will just say, if you do pay attention to research and you do have actual data and you take it upon yourself to look into this, you'll realize, like, there's a lot of, you know, commonalities that come up. I could go into that in another video, but honestly, I feel like it's judgmental, and like, I don't feel in that case like I have a right to speak on that. I feel like a lot of this particular subject is a result of being a part of a porn culture, and the thing is, like, I'm a person, I consume that as well. Like, I live in America, like, sex is everywhere. I get on Instagram, there's butts galore. I have the option of that, mind you, but it's like, I'm a little weak too, and like, you know, what can I say? Like, it is like the part of the culture, and it's either you get in or you get left behind. And I understand that, like, one of the sexiest things you can do is just be yourself, but you have to be yourself still in a way that's like self-aware enough to, like, oh, I know how to be appropriate here. That's cool. Be you appropriately. Don't be somebody else for the scenario. Just be you, how you should be there. Like, go to a wedding, still hold your personality, but no, like, this isn't like about you, and that everyone will have a better time if you allow, like, the event to go as it should go. And then when it's personality time, when it's dance time, then that's your time. They wanted you to have fun. Like, that's you know what I mean? Like, be your appropriate version of that. It's not like, don't make this about your thing. So don't make other people's bathroom experience about your thing. Don't make other people's track meet about your thing. Like, it's just not fair to do that to people. It's so unfair. I can only imagine what it's like, because I'm like, I played on co-ed teams to play Ultimate Frisbee in college, and I had a teammate. She's one of the coolest people, like, to this day. She's a mother now. I'm so happy for her. But she was much shorter. I mean, not just for being a girl, but I mean, she was like 5 foot, you know, approximately. And she was a handler for our Ultimate Frisbee team, which is not someone who does as much of the sprinting up and down the field. It's someone who more moves it amongst the team laterally in order to kind of like get it down the field. It's a little difficult to understand, but I'll just say it's like a very, you know, it's a contributing part of the team. You obviously need to know how to have eyes on everybody. You got to have communication with your other handlers, both verbal and nonverbal communication. You got to know your team. And like, I loved my team for that purpose. It was we were connected like that. But there were only like a couple girls, and she was almost always there. And so she had to play co-ed. She didn't have a girls team to play with. And like, she kept up. But like, it's because we also had some really good guys on our team. If it was just, you know, like we were writing a Netflix script, that would have been it. It was like, see, short girls can be the best. And it's like, the sport isn't really built for that. But at the same time, she was very good at what she was doing. She even made her good cuts. She could get down, like, you know what I mean? Like, she wasn't just like a one-trick pony, I'm getting at. So I'm more speaking to the fact that she wanted to play so much that she would rather play with our team and all that. And it was like, we technically, I think that was the way the leagues worked. It was either open or women's. And so we played open. And so that's we had no penalty by having women on our team, except for the fact that, you know, it's one less male, which could potentially be a powerhouse. But that's sports thinking. I know that that's offensive to people, but that's sports thinking. If you want to be a coach, or you ever want to be in control of like a manager or groups of people, you got to know how to build a team. And I'm just saying, she was very beneficial to our team. We had some awesome wins at great fun tournaments. And I feel like if she didn't have the encouragement of playing sports up until that point, she wouldn't have taken on that challenge and that opportunity. And I just had so many other female friends who like were so impressive in their sports in ways that like, I can't dribble a soccer ball like that. And I played soccer for a year. And there's girls that they just have the athletic skill set where like they can get the ball up and down the field much faster than I can. I can maybe outrun them just on land by legs, but because I do not have that particular set of dexterity that they had developed, it's like, yeah, you're a better soccer player than I am. So that's that sort of thing. But it's like, you know that that's not going to be the case by and large if we were both sent to soccer camp at 8 years old. And then it's like, oh, we're now 14 and we're playing against each other. It's like, biology is kicked in at this point. Like, I've probably gotten a little taller. I've been playing with people who are also getting taller rapidly, and there's always like that one like ginormous kid everywhere who's you're just like, I don't know. Maybe that's a social contagion effect, because a tall kid just makes all the other kids like, damn, I gotta grow. Gotta get big. We're all just gonna be giants. I'm 6'2". My younger brother is 6'1" about, so I don't know where we came from, but but I don't know, I was around a lot of tall boys at my Catholic school, and I was just like, I guess we're tall. And so I had realized that I had an advantage when it came to things like basketball, which I was terrible at, still terrible at. But hurdling, I was good at that. So a guy who is running, which is the case, mind you, this isn't a hypothetical, guys have the records in so many of these female track events. And it's a breeze for them too. It's not even like this kind of thing that takes like years of training. Like, it's, oh, can you throw a particularly difficult object? I was gonna say a javelin, but I'm like, I feel like a guy has a particularly, because of our body structure, it would encourage the ability to throw a javelin stronger than it would for a female. And I was like a shot put, but I actually knew really strong like high school girl shot putters, but their bodies were like built for that. I would say it was almost like non-traditional athletic girls where like they could do that, but people of overall health did not seem to prioritize the particular development of moving that way, because you had to like shot put under your chin. I'm like cracking my neck just doing it. I'm like, this is a foreign. I don't lift barbells. I have one over there. This is how hard it is for me to stay on topic. The point that I was trying to talk about this whole time was just like the super straight thing. I think I've kind of just covered it because it's really not that serious of a movement. It's just kind of here's a mirror, look at yourself, like, do you realize how absurd you sound? And it's like, yeah, of course they realize it. It's a power grab. Like, of course they realize it. Whoever they even is anymore. That's the thing, is that's why I'm like, I don't know who's truly puppeteering. Because statistically, if you do know about transsexuals and the idea that like a lot of them historically had a hard time with employment and whatnot, like, I don't know how they have these jobs and like have all these like Photoshop, I guess answered that part, the Photoshop skills. But I mean, I don't know how they have such like technological outreach. I don't know, I feel like in order to afford a computer and to afford stuff, it's like you need money and a job, and like, I don't know. I'm totally speculating here, trying to make some sense out of things, and I'm just saying, I don't believe it's like, if you were to point the finger, I don't know that it would be pointed in necessarily the right degree. It'd be in like approximately the right direction, but I'm like, I don't know. It started as maybe a real gender ideology was really like a thing of like justifying transsexualism, and then it became transgenderism, where it was really about the idea that, I think it's about hormones at this point. So they can sell you hormones at this point. Because it's like, oh, do you want to be male? Just like be masculine, which is testosterone. Oh, do you want to be female? Oh, just be feminine, which is estrogen. But oh, they're not the same though. female and feminine are not the same, but also if you want to be female, here's how to do it. Here's all the feminine ways to do it. Here's all the products. By the way, if you're a woman, you're immediately just a consumer. That's how it's looked at. It's so insulting. I would, like, as a gay guy who hates being marketed to in like a condescending way, which insults our intelligence, I'm like, I could only imagine how a young trans person would feel if they were as like, I don't know, pretentious as I was, like as defensive with their identity as I was, I would say, where it'd be like, ooh, let's put like the little striped colors on all of our everything, and then hopefully you won't mind that it's $10 more expensive than the other designs. And there's just so much about it that's really like, okay, you got to immediately wax everything, you got to immediately buy all the cosmetics you need, outfits, you need night looks, you need day looks, you gotta have swimwear, you gotta have all the things to tie your insecurities down, you better start talking to your surgeon, you better, oh, I guess fit a therapist in there somewhere. You gotta make sure, only for your surgeon, mind you, your surgeon needs a letter from your therapist. And you gotta look as hot as possible, right? Like the ladies in the porn you watch. Yeah, that's how it reads to at least me and a lot of other people who, again, are seeing the forest for the weird trees. The trees that are trying to fit in with the shrubs, and the shrubs are like, you're not a shrub. We see you're not a shrub. What are you doing? You're like towering over us. You're like a tree. It is weird to me. It's more than weird. It's interesting. It is overstayed its welcome. This should have stayed online. This should have been a little fetish sub-community. It's like, why in the world is this even being talked about? Where else can you just take your kinks into public like this? Like, this is so weird to me. That's why I'm like, I don't know that this is really a transsexuals thing. It almost feels like either somebody who really hates the LGBT wants to like, how can we turn this into a thing? How can we like loop in the P word that everybody hates? How can we somehow tie that in? Or MAPS, if you know what those are. MAPS. All capital letters. Don't look it up. I'm just saying it's a it's initialism for, you know, people who aren't appropriately attracted. And it's just, I almost feel like they were trying to undermine the entire thing, because even myself, I'm like, I'm definitely not a part of that LGBTQIA2 plus, or I don't know where we end and like why plus would need another plus, but it's more than plus. Infinity plus one, like it's like that kind of thinking. That's why I'm like, if a kid brought this to me, I'd be like, I'm not joining your team. I'm gonna go be gay over there with the regular gays, who are also weird, but self-aware enough. And I think that was the thing, is it's like, are you the kind of person who shows up to a team and goes, I'm the star of this series, I'm gonna be the captain, and they're like, are you good enough to be the captain? Which includes building the trust of your team, so you're probably not gonna be qualified for it immediately. And the answer is yeah, unequivocally yes. I believe in myself, and I get that everyone's a hater, and I know that whatever it takes, I'm willing to do it. And you're like, what? That's like nice thinking or whatever, but in real life, you have to work your life around like reality, like your needs and your family's needs, and like, what world are you living in? It's delusion. And to think that everyone else is just gonna play along if you're just overly confident enough is like, don't look at what I'm trying to disillusion you with. And then this hand's like starting a little fire over here. I don't know. I do know. I feel like when I catch myself starting to get a little bit too mean with my criticism, I end up saying I don't know, because I'm trying to withdraw a little bit. But I do know on this topic. I know how I feel. I won't be convinced otherwise. Thank you so much for your consideration and your input, and I have learned a lot from people. But there's a certain point where I'm like, you can learn, but you also need to be careful who you allow into your brain. Because I don't know if you've seen some dark stuff, some scary stuff in your life, but that stuff sticks with you. Or if someone has ever said something that's like just so mean that it hurt you so much, And that just sticks with you, you know? Like, try as you might, you want to forget it, but like, you can't. And so you have to be careful with the kind of things you surround yourself with and what you expose yourself with. If you stare too long into the abyss stares back at you. That was creepy, but remember it, because it's true. Don't surround yourself with too much propaganda, with too much stuff where you feel you can easily be swept away by it. Because if you feel you can, you probably will. Thank you for this. This has been a form of therapy for me, but I also hope that people were able to hear out some of my talking points. I talked a lot about myself because I want you to know where I'm coming from. I think anyone can offer an opinion. I think credibility comes from establishing, you know, some sense of integrity. And I think that if I tell you about myself, if I give you bits and pieces of myself, and if you realize time to time that it all makes sense, that like, if this isn't a person who's putting on and telling stories, then my opinion will mean more to you. That's how I value people. I don't just take anyone off the internet and be like, ooh yeah, that's the best person. They said the things I want to hear. That makes them so cool, so great. No, it's gotta be earned. It's gotta be real. Thanks for coming to my pillow talk. This was so intimate.